Hello, I'm Tony Youngs. Welcome to the next tape in the series, Who is Tony Youngs? Now, the reason I decided to do this tape is because I'm probably one of the very few people that believes and does hands-on training. Not many people who sell books and tapes or home study systems and their picture is on the cover, not many of those people are willing to take you out in the field in your own backyard and prove that it works. So they just sort of leave it up to you. Now, there's a reason that I believe that I always want to do hands-on training. I want the opportunity to take you out in your backyard. And the reason is because of my background and my upbringing. So I wanted to give you an idea of who I am and why I believe that hands-on training is the way to go. Now, the first thing I did is, I was born and raised in America. Both of my parents are from England. They came over to America in 1956, and then after they moved to America, I was born. Now, my dad, he came to Georgia because he got a job at Lockheed. It's an aircraft company. They build mostly military aircraft, cargo planes for the Army, Navy, Marines, and the Air Force. And Lockheed builds and sells these planes to them. So their major building plant was in Marietta, Georgia. And that's where I was born. So I was actually the first American in the family, and I'm proud to be an American. But anyway, my dad was an engineer, and he used to actually fly on the planes that Lockheed would build, and he would get hazardous duty pay. Now, my father, he was very conservative because he was from England, but he would learn to live on his normal salary, and the hazardous duty pay that he received for flying, he would invest it. So my dad was also an investor. He would invest in stocks and bonds and real estate, and he became a millionaire from investing. So that was part of the seed that was planted in me. Now, what happened is I never went to college. After I got out of high school or during high school, I got a job at a lumber company. And at this lumber company, they needed someone to install sliding glass doors in new houses. So they chose me to be that person. Now, the way that I learned how to install sliding glass doors is by working with someone else. I would have to go out in the field and work with someone else who installs these sliding glass doors, and that's how I learned to do it. So while I was watching him, he would give me the screwdrivers and the tools and let me start installing some of them along with him. And I got very good at it over the years. Sometimes I would actually be on a third-story floor installing a sliding glass door, and I actually fell out 3 stories and didn't get hurt. It was an amazing thing. But anyway, over time, the company kept growing, so they wanted more people to install sliding glass doors. So then I would have to train other people. I would have to take them by the hand, and we would go out and install sliding glass doors all day long, and I would teach them. So you see, it was hands-on training that I learned how to do that, and because I learned how to do it, I got a big raise, and that is the beginning of making big bucks. Now, on a side note, I also had hobbies. I was interested in music, so I joined a band and I used to sing. Now, first of all, not many people have the guts to sing in front of an audience. Now, karaoke has come a long way, but But you know, I learned how to sing in the shower and just by listening to songs on the radio and singing along with them. And I always had this passion that I wanted to do that. So if you really want to do something, you just got to say, well, I'm going to give it a try. I don't care what other people think. I think I can do this. So I went ahead and became a singer in a band. And my goal was to become a rock star. You know, I think everybody wants to be a rock star at some time in their life. But after playing in shady nightclubs and actually, we actually made our own music. I wrote a few songs and we went into a studio and we really had big dreams. So I was a dreamer and I really believed that we were going to make it. Now, because there's millions of people just like that want to make it, I didn't know this till later in life, but if you have a dream to be a band or a musician, actually marketing is the key. I'll talk more about that in a moment. But anyway, so what happened is the band, we never really made much money. We played in clubs and we had a good time and a lot of partying, but I could see that I was going to go nowhere. Now, one day, my dad came home from work at Lockheed and he said, listen, Lockheed just won a big contract and they're going to have to build a couple of hundred of the world's largest cargo airplane called the C-5B or C-5A. There was two different versions, and it was a very large cargo airplane. And my dad said, listen, they're going to have to hire 35,000 people at Lockheed to do this. So he says that they've started a training program, and my dad brought home some applications, and he said, I want all my sons to take this training. So I had an older brother named Paul, a younger brother named Pete, and we filled out the application because, you know, everybody in Marietta, if you worked at Lockheed, you were getting paid big bucks and you had all your insurance and dental and everything was included as you work at Lockheed. So people made careers out of working at Lockheed. So we figured that, I mean, if you get a job at Lockheed, you have arrived. Now, the only way we could get a job, I had no experience building airplanes, but they had a 3-month training program. So if you filled out this application, they would look at your application, and if you get accepted, they would send you to this training program. So I went ahead and me and my older brother, we sent them in, and we got asked right away to go to this training. Now, this training was hands-on. We went to this warehouse where they had tons of sheet metal, a whole bunch of toolboxes, and that was what we would have to do. Every night for 3 months, we would have to go spend 4 hours taking sheet metal, putting them together, drilling holes, shooting rivets, and we would have to build projects. And that's how you build an airplane. So we were getting hands-on training. And so we had to, for 3 months, if you took this class, if you did a good job, they would have inspectors to inspect your work. And if you did a good job, you would get hired at Lockheed. Now, there was no guarantee that you would get hired. So I was taking a risk when I took this class. I didn't know if I was going to get hired, but I went ahead and took the class. Now, I would work at the lumber company for 8 hours a day. And then I would go straight to this class for 4 hours every night for 3 months in the hopes of getting a job. And as soon as the class was over, me and my brother got hired within 1 week. So all of a sudden, I started out at an extremely high rate of pay. It was 4 times what I was making at the lumber company. 4 times. And I felt like I had arrived. And, you know, because my dad was working at Lockheed, I just had this, you know, airplanes were in my blood. I liked airplanes. My dad used to take us flying and let us drive and stuff. So when I got this job, first of all, the lesson here is you got to be willing to do something for a bigger reward later. I didn't know if I was going to get a job, but I was willing to give it a try. I was willing to go out and try it. So there's a lesson that I've included in this tape. It paid off. I was making big money. But after a couple of years at Lockheed, I saw that there was other people working out on the flight line. Now, my goal was I wanted to get promoted to be on the flight line. See, I had been shooting rivets for years and building airplanes on the production line. But after the airplanes are built, they take them out and fly them. People like my father would take the planes out and fly the airplanes. And then there was mechanics out on the flight line that when the planes would land, they would signal them in, and then they would park the airplanes, and then they would fix anything wrong with the plane before they sell it to the Air Force. So I wanted to be on the flight line. It was the highest hourly paying job you could possibly have at Lockheed. So that was my goal, and I kept applying for a promotion, and they kept turning me down. They said, you have to have at least 2 years experience working on live aircraft. Now, live aircraft means airplanes that have fuel in the tanks and they have, they actually fly the planes. And that's what they call live airplanes. So I didn't have any experience for that. So I went and got a second job at nighttime at a small airport, and I was working on Learjets. Now, I was not a certified mechanic, but I was an apprentice mechanic. There was real mechanics working on these airplanes, but I would work alongside them and learn how. And I did this for 2 years. And after 2 years of working on Learjets with a live mechanic, that's hands-on training, then I got promoted at Lockheed to the flight line. And man, I was enjoying it. Now, while I was so first of all, I just want to remind you that hands-on training, working alongside a mechanic on real airplanes, resulted in big bucks. And so you're beginning to see the story on why I believe in hands-on training. Now, so this resulted in a promotion, and not to mention all the fringe benefits I enjoyed working on. Now, while I was working at that small airport, I went ahead and took flying lessons. I wanted to be a pilot because I worked on planes, so I wanted to be a pilot. Now, when you take flying lessons, you fly alongside an instructor, but they put you in the pilot seat on your very first lesson. So you're actually the one flying, but you have an instructor beside you who also has controls. He has the steering wheel, the brakes, everything, and the throttles. Also, you got pilot, co-pilot. So you have to fly for at least 13 hours with an instructor, and they take you out, they put you through all kinds of tests and stalls and landings and takeoffs. So you're flying alongside an instructor. That is hands-on training. And after 13 hours, the pilot gets out of the plane and said, the instructor, he got out of the plane and said, okay, it's time for you to solo. So after flying with an instructor for a while to learn how to do it, it was time to do it by myself without anyone else in the plane. And it was a scary thing, but he told me to go fly around the airport and do 3 landings and takeoffs and then come back and pick him up. So I did that, and that was my solo. So another reason, hands-on training. Now, remember, I never went to college, and I didn't do all that great in high school, but all of this extra continuing education paid off for me. And I have a lot of friends that went to college, and they're not even doing what they learned in college. They're not doing the career they sought. Now, as I was working at Lockheed, all of my other friends who were making big bucks, they were taking that money and investing it in real estate, stocks and bonds, and mutual funds and CDs. And you know, I didn't do any of that. I didn't know anything about investing. And then one day I saw Dave Delgado on TV selling books and tapes on how to invest in real estate. Now, here's another thing about Delgado. The reason that I liked watching his TV show is because every week he would teach a different topic. One week, if you watched his TV show, he would teach you how to do a lease option deal. The next week, he would teach you how to do an owner finance deal or whatever. So I kept watching that show, and I was getting more and more interested. But here's what was unique about Delgado. He was a dreamer. Remember back in my days as a singer in a band? I told you I was a dreamer. I had this dream that I was going to be a famous rock star someday. And that dream vanished because the powers that be, whatever kind of God you believe in, had different plans for my life. And it worked out great. So I like Delgado because he had a show called Go for Your Dreams. He said, you know, don't ever let anybody stop you from being a dreamer, because dreams do come true. So whatever your goal in life is, whatever your dream is, seek that dream with a passion. Because do you know that every dream I ever had, with the exception of being a rock star, has come to pass. But later on in life, you're going to see that I basically got to be the rock star. I did make a few records, and I did get to sing on big stages. And so I got a taste of that lifestyle, but today I look back and say, hey, I'm glad that I'm not a rock star. I really am, because I just, my lifestyle changed, and I'm not into that type of lifestyle anymore. But I can have all the fun I want and sing and do whatever I want without having to make it a business, okay? Now, the next thing that happened is I saw this Delgado show. I really related to him because he was down to earth. But I never would buy his books and tapes off the TV because they were very expensive. And everybody around me was saying, that stuff doesn't work. You wouldn't, you know, don't waste your money. But one day it flashed across the screen that Delgado was going to be in my hometown, live in person, giving a free 2-day seminar. So I went to the seminar, and after 2 days I learned so much about making money and investing money that I went ahead and bought the books and tapes. And so I did. Just meeting Delgado in person to see that he was a real guy and he was down to earth and he really was inspiring and motivating. So I bought the books and tapes. And folks, this is a key factor here. I believed it was going to work for me. I believed that it was going to work. So everybody around me was saying that stuff doesn't work, but I wanted it. I really wanted this to work, so I applied it. I went out and tried it, And for the first 3 weeks, I went out driving around looking at foreclosures. I would get the list of foreclosures, and I ran across a vacant house within 3 weeks. And you've heard the story, you know, I was looking in the windows. It turns out it wasn't vacant, so I went to the door to tell them why I was looking in their windows. I said I thought the home was vacant. I thought it was going up for auction. And the lady said, yes, it is in foreclosure, but if you'd like to buy it, then, you know, come on in. I'll show you around. So because I had the books and tapes, and here this lady wanted to sell her house, all I did was use the books and tapes to study. So I'm a believer in home study systems because it sure changed my life. I ended up buying that house, and I was making $27,600 a year at Lockheed, and that was good money back then. But on that first real estate deal, because of those books and tapes, I walked out of closing with a check for $27,500. I had made a year's wages compared to what I was making at Lockheed in 88 days. And so from there, I didn't need any of my own money. I used an investor to put up the money, and I shared the profit with them, but I had a lot of money left over, so I went and did my second deal myself. Because once you go through a deal, you learn from that deal. You learn what not to do next time, and then but you have faith that it works. So I repeated the process. And then I did it again. I bought 5 deals in 4 months, but I still had my job at Lockheed. My dad didn't want me to quit because of the benefits. But I got 2 offers accepted 1 month, so I just worked on, I was fixing up those 2 houses, and I was cutting, I was calling in sick at Lockheed. So after about 12 days, they called and said, hey, did someone die in your family or something? No, why? They said, well, you hadn't been to work in 12 days, and that's when I decided to go ahead and resign. I sent my resignation letter to Lockheed, and I became a full-time investor. Now, doing it part-time for a couple of months, that gave me the confidence, and I had made a lot of money. I had a big stack of money in the bank, so I went ahead and quit because I knew that I had money to carry me for a while. And I quickly realized that if you quit your job, you don't get a paycheck every Thursday like I was for 10 years. Every Thursday I got paid whether I performed really good or not. So when I quit, I realized that if I don't find deals, I don't get paid. So I spent my days looking at a lot of houses. As a matter of fact, I could not find deals by sending letters alone. I had to do more than send letters. I could not find deals by just going to a realtor and saying, bring me deals. I had to go out and find them. So instead of sending letters to people in foreclosure, I would actually plot a course of all the people in my zip code in foreclosure, and I would go out and knock on doors so I could be face-to-face with people in foreclosure. Instead of sending them a letter and saying, hey, I hope you call me, I would actually knock on their door. So therefore, I had a good chance of finding someone that wanted to sell. And it worked for me. If I knocked on 12 doors, I would usually find one person that out of those 12 that would want to sell their house. And they would allow me to make an offer. So I realized if I want to get more than one deal, I need to go to more doors. And I found out that real estate is a numbers game. So for years, I would make it. I had the discipline. You see, Delgado always said you have to have a system and you have to have discipline. And I realized that the system is going out and looking at 12 houses a weekend. to get one deal. So if I did that 3 or 4 times a month, I could get 3 or 4 deals a month. And it was working. So I just kept doing that for years and years. I would find all kinds of great deals out there. Now, I did so well that Deodato kept wanting to interview me on his TV show. So he would interview me and talk about my success with his system. And then he would call me back a year later and put me on his TV show again, just to see if I was still doing good. And he kept calling me back to be on several shows. And what happened is most of his students would see me on his show, and a lot of people would ask about me. And plus, I would get a lot of phone calls from all over the United States. Every time those TV shows would air and people would see me, they would look for my number, and my number was listed in the phone book. So I was getting a lot of calls from all over the United States going, hey, does that stuff really work? Now, what happened is Deodato, he had a lot of people saying, hey, could you teach me how to get started with your system? You know, and Deodato was big time, so he didn't really have time. So he asked me if I would teach people. He says, you've had so much success with my system. Would you be willing to teach my other students? So that's how I became a teacher, you see. So I said, well, okay. So I started teaching. He would get 50 to 100 people in a room on a Saturday, and I'd spend the whole day teaching them step by step how to get started with his system. And it was very successful. And in the meantime, I was going to church, and I was doing a lot of volunteer work, because when you're your own boss and you have your own hours, and I got to tell you folks, that was the beauty of it. When you have your own hours and you're doing well, you just want to help others. You just want to give back. And so I was going to church, and they needed, this is a big church with 3,500 members, and they have a television ministry. So somehow I got into volunteering for the media ministry, and I became one of their cameramen, and I actually became a professional cameraman. And this was all on a volunteer basis. And I had this mentor. He used to be the stage manager for a famous country rock band. And now he was working at the church as the stage, the main media mogul. So he became like a mentor to me as far as the media. Because I believe in videos and hands-on training, so he helped me put together a lot of videos, which are in my home study course. And I learned so much from this man that he became a mentor. And that's another thing, is you need a mentor. Now, all of this learning about, hands-on learning about the media ministry and making videos and television production and using systems, I have a hobby of making my own videos. Now, I made a video. I said, well, heck, I'm going to make a video for the people at Deodato. I'm going to make a video showing how to do the mechanics of a deal from start to finish. So I made one video, and I gave it to Deodato, and I said, look, I made this video of how to put a deal together. And he thought that was the greatest thing. Back then, nobody had videos. They had books and cassette tapes. That's all they had. Nobody came up with a video. So I showed Deodato this video. He thought it was the greatest idea. He said, hey, do you mind if I include this with my home study system? Anybody that buys it, I'm going to give you the video. But he goes, I will give you, whatever it cost you and a little extra. So he was giving me a fee for producing these videos. Now, he was also selling the video by itself on his TV show, and he was selling it for like $69. Well, he sold 12,000 copies in the first year, and he was sending me royalty checks. And that video grossed over $2 million for Deodato, and I got royalties off of that. So you see, I wanted to be a rock star to get royalties off of singing, but I ended up having, you know, the way life works, I ended up having a video instead of an album or a record. And I got a lot of royalties off of that. So anyway, you can understand why I like videos, because first of all, I can teach you hands-on. Now, over the years of going out and knocking on doors, I would knock on 40 doors a month, and I did it for 15 years. And while I was out knocking on doors, I would find other deals, which turned out to be better deals than the foreclosures, and I called that the hidden market. So I came up with this hidden market system. I was always filming these deals that I would find, and I would make good profit. I was finding deal after deal after deal. So I firmly believe that out in the field is where you find good deals, and not many people are willing to do that. But the hidden market, I put together some videos about the hidden market and some manuals and paperwork, and I made a home study system, and Deodato wanted me to be a speaker on his seminar tour because I had this system. Now what happened is Donald Trump and the Learning Annex put together this big seminar tour. And they would draw crowds of 60 to 80,000 people, and they would fill up convention centers and stadiums. And they had Donald Trump and Robert Kiyosaki and Tony Robbins and Russell Simmons and the Mad Money guy, Jim Cramer, and Susie Orman. They would have all these headliners of these huge seminars, and the Learning Annex contacted me and asked me if I would be one of their speakers. Now, this only happened because of the hidden market system. They had heard about this system, and they thought that was the greatest thing, was the hidden market. So they wanted me on their tour. So I got to tour with all these big shots, and it was great. I was hobnobbing with some of the most elite people, and I actually would have conversations with Kiyosaki. I tried to get my picture taken with Donald Trump, and he doesn't like taking pictures with just anybody, so I didn't qualify. But anyway, so this all came together because of my hidden market and my hands-on training. Now, over the years, I've been asked to speak at real estate investors clubs all over the United States, and some big seminars like the Learning Annex. And I find that a lot of the students, they're just sort of lost when they buy a set of books and tapes. First of all, they have to find time to study them, and that's another key factor, is you must study the systems. The systems work, but you can't just listen to a tape one time and expect to get it. What I found, and this is what I did with Deodato's system, I listened to those tapes over and over and over and over and over. I mean, I would take tape number 1 and I would just let it keep replaying over and over. Every time I was in my car, I would listen over and over and over and over. And then that stuff would get ingrained in my brain. Now, here's a key fact here. If you read a book one time, you're gonna forget 80%. you only retain about 20% or maybe 80%. I forget what the real thing is, but you forget. If ever you've read a book a second time, you'll see that you don't remember that. You say, hey, that's something new. And if you read that book 10 times, you'll still find something in that book that you didn't. Same with listening to tapes or watching training videos. You watch them over and over, and then when you get in front of a seller with a unique situation, all of that knowledge comes to surface when you're in front of a seller. Like, I always remember that we used to buy houses with creative techniques. You don't have to have money. You use creative financing, like owner financing or a wraparound mortgage. So when you're in front of a seller and he tells you his situation, all of a sudden you have a whole computer in your brain that has all that knowledge stored somewhere, and it comes to surface. It comes to surface when you need it most. Like, I remember talking to a seller, and he said, well, my house is free and clear, but I need $12,000 to get my next house. And so I'd start saying, okay, well, why don't you go down and borrow $12,000 on an equity line, and I'll take over that loan and make the payments on it. Therefore, that gives you the 12, and then you can owner finance the balance of the purchase price at 3% interest for 15 years with a balloon payment due in 7 years. And you see, that's what I mean. By listening to these tapes over and over, your mind comes up with these great scenarios when you're in a situation. But you will not find that situation unless you're out there talking to people, looking for houses, knocking on doors. Which brings me to another thing, because all the people that I have had the pleasure to meet around the country, other students. You see, I'm an uneducated guy. I mean, I believe in continuing education. I believe in these home study systems because it changed my life. And I've had the greatest life. And I just want it for you. And the best way I can teach you is not just in the classroom. Everything sounds good in the classroom, but when you get out in the field, you freeze up and you just don't know. The fear of the unknown holds you back. So that's why I'm a believer in hands-on training, and that's why I do come to your city and train you. So now what I want to do is tell you about my hands-on training programs. First of all, the ultimate is one-on-one hands-on training. That's where I'm going to come to your zip code and teach you to be an expert right in your own backyard. Because here in my area, in my zip code, I've been working the same zip codes year after year after year, and I have mastered my own market. The reason I've mastered it is because I've been in the same neighborhoods month after month, year after year, day after day, and I know those neighborhoods like the back of my hand. Every time I go in there, it's just a different house that I'm going to see, or it's a different house that's in foreclosure, or it's a different house that's been repossessed by the bank. And there's your own 5-mile radius will produce enough real estate for you to be an expert. You do not have to buy in New Orleans, or, I mean, you can do those type of things if you want, but I can make you an expert in your own backyard. And I believe if you become an expert in your own backyard first, then you'll understand how to go to other states. Now, I personally have owned property in other states, and it's so hard to manage or keep up with those properties. I like having investments that I can drive out and see it anytime I want. And I don't know about you, and I don't know what your opinion is, but I believe that I like to invest in things that I can, see I mean, I want to be able to go out and see them and check on them and manage them, because I've never had a lot of good luck with out-of-state managers. They just don't have my greatest interest at heart. So there are good managers out there, but you have to go through a few of them to find the good ones. And so anyway, just another key point. Now, my one-on-one training is where I come to your city and I personally take you to houses. I teach you how to inspect them, how to estimate repairs, how to analyze the neighborhood to see if it's a good neighborhood or a bad neighborhood, how to find out what the rents are, and how to spot a house that you could easily wholesale to another investor. You see, one of the things that you have to learn about real estate is if you buy something, if for some reason it takes a while to sell it, you've got to be able to rent it to cover the payments. Because, you know, for years I took over the loans subject to. So, you know, if I take over a loan, I've got to have some way of making the payments. So I would rent them out if I couldn't sell them quick enough. So I can show you what to buy and what not to buy in your own backyard. I'll show you how to find the best areas in your 5-mile radius and how to concentrate on certain neighborhoods and how to put flyers in those neighborhoods to where you constantly are getting deals in those neighborhoods. I'll take you to your foreclosure auction and meet investors that we can see, that we can meet, and people with cash. I'll set you up with cash buyers that if you're willing to go find the deals, then you can sell them. And I'm going to teach you how to be good at finding deals. See, you will never ever have to use your money or risk your money if you're good at finding deals. So that's what I teach people. I don't say, hey, get with an agent, here's proof of funds, here's all this. You must be good at finding deals. And if you do that, I will make you a serious monthly income. Now, I also have bus trips. I have bus trips where I take 40 or 50 people out and we go out and find deals. If you like smaller groups, I have groups of just 10. Where I can fit you in a van. I've got 10, you know, I try to get 10, 12 people in a van, and I teach you on that level. It just depends on what kind of training you want. So I have groups of 10. I can come to your state and train a group of 10 of you or 12, or you can come to my state and I'll teach you. You know, if you want to come to one of my big bus trips, where everything I do is a 3-day training. Me and you, and me or your spouse with you, I mean you and your spouse or a family member, but it's mainly just me and you. I'm just like when I was learning to fly an airplane. I'm going to put you in the pilot seat and I'm going to be the co-pilot or the instructor that's right there to grab the controls if you get into a bind. Because that's the best way, is getting you doing it, hands-on doing it. And that's what I'm going to do with you. I can also do that in those small classes, so I want you to go to my website and see what it is that would best suit your needs and your budget. You see, I can't just train everybody for free that wants to be trained. But I do it through once I train you, then I get you on my coaching calls and I keep coaching you, and the training never ends, because we live in a market that is always changing, and you need that ongoing training, which I supply through the internet. You can log on to my laptop every week as I teach you live after I train you in person. I'm going to take you down to an auction and teach you how to talk to investors, how to get their contact information. I'm going to take you down to the courthouse. You must know how to do title searches. You have got to know how to do title searches to find out if there's any liens or loans on a property, because knowing the liens and loans on a property can turn a bad deal into a good deal by me teaching you how to negotiate. I also wanted to tell you about other things. You know, it's not all hard work. You can have the toys you always wanted. One of my dreams was I always wanted to own my own houseboat. And I went down to the harbor and I went up and down the docks looking at houseboats for sale, and I wanted one. And I just knew that someday I was going to buy a houseboat. But when I was looking, I was talking to a man that was on his boat, and it had a for sale sign, and I just started talking. And while I was talking to him, he was telling me that he wanted like $65,000 for his houseboat. And so I asked him, I said, "Do you have a loan on that boat?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, here's what I can do." And I offered to take over his loan subject to. But then it turned out his loan was nowhere near the cost of the boat, so he was able to owner finance the rest. So I used real estate techniques, and I bought the boat that day. I had no intentions of buying a houseboat that day. I was just going out and looking, and I walked away the owner of my dream houseboat, and it brought much pleasure. I had a lot of family fun with that. It was so much fun, and I used real estate techniques to buy that houseboat. So dreams come true. Another thing that I did, I always wanted to, I believed in continuing education. And I've always felt that they don't teach you how to do high school. I mean, they don't teach you how to manage money or balance a checkbook. They don't teach you anything in high school, grade school, or college about how to make money or be an entrepreneur. They just teach you how to get a job for someone else. Folks, I got to tell you, the best pleasure I've ever had since I got into real estate was working for myself, being my own boss, being able to come and go as I please, being able to drop everything and help someone else if I needed to. You know, I used to do work in the homeless shelters. I would, every Friday night, I would go down to the homeless shelters and talk to the people saying, "Why are you homeless? I can teach you how to buy a house with no money or no credit." But the problem with them is they're always addicted to drugs and alcohol. So I could show them how to get off drugs and alcohol. I could get them into a home. And so for 9 years, every Friday night, I would go down to the homeless shelters and teach people how to get a home. So I was featured on my local Atlanta television shows. They kept wanting to interview me because of my work in the homeless shelters, and that was a reward. But you know, I wasn't able to help everybody. Some people wanted it, but some people are perfectly content being homeless because they're taken care of. But I try to get people on their feet. You know, in today's day and age, with an unsecure economy, we have an economy that, you know, we're losing jobs and businesses are folding. You must learn how to use your own hands to support yourself. My goal is to train as many people as I can to be an entrepreneur, to learn how to make money, whether the market is doing good or bad, whether the economy is doing good or bad. You see, during this crisis, I didn't suffer. I just created my own income. I didn't get laid off. I didn't get fired. I didn't lose my home because I created my own job. And that's what I want to do with you. Now, remember the band I was in when I was a young lad? Well, Years later, I was in a nightclub and I saw my old band was in there still performing 10 or 12 years later. And I had attained a lot of success in real estate, and I had the entrepreneur spirit. So I sat and listened to the band and I thought, man, they're still doing good after all these years. They've just gotten better and better. So I took them into a studio and I recorded an album for them and printed up, published a bunch of cassette tapes for them. And then I promoted a rock concert. I checked with with an agent, and you can hire any famous band you want for a price. So I had asked these guys, I said, so who was y'all's favorite bands growing up? And they said Lynyrd Skynyrd and Atlanta Rhythm Section and 38 Special. So I contacted the manager for Skynyrd and asked if I could hire them to do a concert. I was going to promote a concert and have my band as the opening act. And Skynyrd wasn't available, but the Atlanta Rhythm Section was. So I hired a concert hall. I hired Atlanta Rhythm Section to do a concert. And I got a venue, a concert hall. And then the local radio stations asked if they could co-promote the concert with me, and they gave me free radio advertising. So since I'm the promoter, I was able to get anybody I want for the opening act, and so I used my old band. So I promoted a rock concert. It was a lot of fun. I used to camp out to pay money to get tickets to see the Atlanta Rhythm Section at big concert halls, and here I was giving them their paycheck. So I was backstage handing out backstage passes, and I had to provide them with all their food and their dressing rooms, and it was a lot of fun. And so one of the things that I had learned over the years is that you can promote your own concert. So remember when I told you I was in the band, I gave it up because I knew that we'd probably never go anywhere. Well, you can actually hire a main act to bring in the people, and then you can have a no-name band as the opening act, and it gives them a lot of publicity. And at this concert, the band I used to be in, they had all those new cassette tapes that I had recorded for them, and they sold out, and they sold a bunch of t-shirts, so they made pretty good money. So it's just a good idea. I think that you can create fame if you know a lot about marketing. So folks, thank you so much for the opportunity to share this video with you. So I want you to go to my website. I want you to tune into my coaching calls. Go to TonyYoungs.com. And if you want to get involved in the coaching calls, go to TonyYoungsCoachingCalls.com. Hands-on training. It will change your life, and you'll be making the big bucks. I'll see you soon.